The savanna near Mikitini, in the remote stretches of northern Tanzania, was quieter than usual. The dry season had pressed its weight on the land, turning grass to dust and rivers to scattered puddles. Birds circled lazily in the thermals, and herds of zebra had moved further east, chasing greener pastures. But in the western corridor of the preserve, silence hung heavy, broken only by the distant crackle of dry brush or the soft, almost imperceptible padding of a predator. But even predators get old. Kofi Mba, a seasoned ranger with the Mwizi Wildlife Conservancy, adjusted his binoculars and squinted across the sunburnt horizon. He'd been following rumors from the Maasai herders who passed through the area, talks of a ghost lion, all bones and shadow, limping near their cattle but too weak to attack. They described him with respect, almost reverence, Simba wa Mwisho, the last lion. It had been over a decade since Kofi last tracked a solitary male. Most old lions either died quietly in thickets or were taken down by younger challengers. But something about this case gnawed at him. Perhaps it was the tone in the herders' voices, less fear, more sorrow. He and his partner, a young vet named Eliza Thompson, had been scanning the area for 3 days. She sat beside him in the dusty Land Cruiser, checking her medical bag again, even though she'd done it 5 times already. "You're sure it's not just a wild tale?" she asked. Kofi shook his head. "These people know lions. They don't make stories about the ones that should be dead already." They drove westward, tires crunching over cracked earth, until Kofi raised a hand to stop. "There," he whispered, pointing toward a cluster of thorny shrubs near a dry riverbed. Lying beneath the shade was something that barely resembled a lion. The creature's ribs jutted out like scaffolding beneath sagging skin. His mane, once a crown, was patchy and matted. Scars ran along his flanks, some fresh, others faded with time. One eye was shut, crusted over. The other blinked slowly, following the vehicle as it rolled to a stop. Eliza gasped. "He's ancient." Kofi nodded. "And still breathing." They approached on foot, cautiously. The lion didn't rise. He growled, a hoarse, broken sound, but made no move to charge. His body trembled even as he lifted his head. "Do you think he was abandoned by a pride?" Eliza asked. "No pride would have kept him at this age. He's likely been alone for years." As they circled closer, Kofi recognized the notches in the lion's ear and a faded tracking tag on the rear leg. He pulled out his notebook and cross-referenced it with the Conservancy's old records. "Elijah," he murmured. "Tag number 293. Tagged 12 years ago near the southern ridge. Last sighting, 5 years back." "Elijah," Eliza repeated, crouching near him. "He looks ready to die. Which is exactly why we're here." They tranquilized him gently, mindful of his fragile condition. Eliza worked quickly, checking his vitals, cleaning wounds, and administering fluids. Flies buzzed around them, drawn to the blood and medicine, but neither ranger flinched. "His heart's weak, but still steady," Eliza said. "And look here, his teeth are worn to the gums. He's barely able to chew meat anymore. That's probably why he's starving." They loaded Elijah onto a makeshift stretcher and secured him in the Land Cruiser, covering him with a tarp to block the heat. The drive back to the Conservancy's medical enclosure was silent, save for the rumble of tires and the occasional groan from the lion in the back. At the sanctuary's rehabilitation pen, they kept Elijah under close observation. The first few days were tense. He refused food, only drank in sips, and stared at the walls as though he was waiting to fade away. Kofi kept a vigil by his pen every night, sometimes speaking softly in Swahili, telling the lion about the weather, the rains to come, or the herds passing through the hills. And somehow, Elijah listened. On the 5th day, he stood. Shakily, painfully, but it was a stand nonetheless. He took a few steps toward the fresh meat laid near his water bowl, sniffed it, and began to chew, slowly, as if remembering how to be a lion. Eliza burst into tears when she saw it. Weeks passed. With a specialized diet, medication, and hydration, Elijah began to fill out. His mane never fully grew back, but his coat regained some shine. Though his movements remained stiff, he could now walk the full length of his enclosure without collapsing. Still, Kofi knew the truth: Elijah would never return to the wild. He was too old, too slow, too blind in one eye. Nature had already written his ending. But perhaps, Kofi thought, the lion deserved a different one. He needs space, Kofi told the conservancy board one afternoon. Not a cage. He should see the sun, the plains, even if it's just from the edge. They approved the idea: a large protected zone on the reserve's eastern boundary, fenced but open, with real grass, trees, and room to roam. They called it the Elders' Sanctuary. It became Elijah's final domain. Over the next year, Elijah lived in peace. School children visited, standing silently behind the fence as Kofi told them his story. "He is the memory of this land," he'd say. "He walked it when your fathers were boys. He fought for territory when the stars still burned brighter in the sky." Sometimes, in the quiet mornings, Kofi would find him lying atop a rise, face turned toward the wind, as if watching ghosts of old herds passing by. Eliza often sat with him, a notebook in her lap. "He's more than just a survivor," she said once. "He's something sacred." Kofi nodded. "He reminds us we're not always supposed to win the fight. Sometimes, we just hold on long enough for the world to change." One morning, nearly a year to the day since they found him, Kofi walked to the sanctuary and saw Elijah lying near the acacia tree where he usually napped. But something was different. The rise and fall of his chest, absent. The stillness, not of rest, but of release. He approached slowly, removed his hat, and knelt beside the lion. Elijah's eyes were half open, gazing eastward toward the rising sun. Eliza arrived minutes later and sank to her knees beside him. She touched the lion's mane gently. He waited, she whispered. Until he didn't need to anymore. They buried Elijah beneath the acacia tree, marking the spot with a carved stone. On it, the words, "Elijah, the last path." He walked it with dignity. And in the years that followed, his story became legend in the conservancy, of a lion who should have died alone and unseen, but instead found rest under watchful eyes and human kindness. And somewhere, in the winds that sweep across the Tanzanian savanna, it said you can still hear him, one final roar carried softly through the trees, reminding all who listen that every life, even in its twilight, matters. Dear friend, thank you so much for watching our story. Don't forget to like and subscribe to support the channel.